Welcome. It's good to be with you. While March came in like a lamb this week, this is the time of year historically when the presence of winter is getting old and tiresome. Thus, various faith traditions and cultures developed early spring rituals to help the time go faster, to alleviate the doldrums of winter, and to be a kind of harbinger of spring. We have only to think of Mardi Gras with its costumes, frivolity, and excess, of St. Patrick's Day, also known for its excess and inebriation, and Purim, with its carnivalesque atmosphere of merriment, costumed revelry, and licensed excess, to such an extent that one should drink so much that one should not be able to tell the difference between blessed be Mordecai and cursed be Haman. So with these thoughts of joyousness and of almost actually joyous and a merry desperation, you can feel in them just an absolute yearning, a longing for the end of winter and for the comfort and the assurance of spring. Let us take our first break to breathe as we consider the imminent arrival, we pray, of spring and the promise this time of year seems to communicate. So let us find our comfortable postures and yet be attentive to the breathing and meditative quality that we seek and that awaits us. And let us try to soften all the barriers that might exist to finding that comforting place, that place of respite and rest away from the world and its concerns. So we might begin with our heads and release our faces, release all of the muscles that hold our foreheads, our eyebrows, our cheekbones, our jaws. Let us just let them drop, just almost stupidly, just as if we have nothing to say, we don't understand. We might rub our ears a bit and feel that place of tension that happens right there where our ears and our jaws and our cheekbones kind of come together. And then let us roll our necks or otherwise release them. They take so much abuse. Well, I don't know, mine does anyway. I know I take most of my tension, not so much in my neck, but in my shoulders and the connections all up in here. So let's pay attention to those shoulders, squeeze them up, drop them down. We might do it a second time, even a third, if it's something that just makes you feel good. Then we can, again, just try to release our arms, maybe pick them up and drop them heavily in our laps, and our wrists and our hands, and wiggle our fingers. Our hands take a lot of tension, I think, also. Let's give them a little bit of TLC. And then going inward, we can just think ourselves into a relaxed state and think of our digestive system, letting go of our tummies, of our diaphragms, of our waists and hips, and pay attention to our thighs and just kind of soften our legs, our knees, and our calves, our lower legs. We might lift our feet off the ground and twirl our ankles as we twirled our hands. We might do them together, actually. And then when we put them down, we can lay our hands gently in our laps and maybe wiggle our toes, thinking of each one. And this exercise actually already focuses us, makes us think about the here and now, right here, right now, where I am, so that we can just continue that focus as we take our first breath, feeling it, traveling with it, tracking it as it comes into our bodies. And we can imagine it just traveling in our noses, down our throats, filling our lungs, maybe even filling the space below our lungs. And we can imagine the air going into our torsos, our stomachs, our legs. It's not really, it will get there via the bloodstream, but let's just imagine it. And feel that breath and exult in it. And when we've taken it all in, we might just pause for a moment and feel it filling our bodies. It is rare that we stop and just breathe. And then we can exhale with equal attention. It is remarkable how many times we might advise someone, breathe, take a breath. Because when we are anxious or tense or concerned, we hold ourselves, we hold our bodies, and even though we are breathing, we have to breathe or we keel over. It's shallow. It's not with all of our muscles, and it's not filling up and bringing all the oxygen in that we can. It's so beneficial. So let's do that again. You've probably done it 3 or 4 times since I've been talking. Focusing on the breath, focusing on the inhalation, focusing on its path into our bodies. Feeling its fullness, feeling its comfort, its healing, and then releasing. And let's do one more. It's a practice, and the practice keeps us anchored in the here and now. That anchoring allows us to experience our lives as they are happening, not in retrospect, not in anticipation, because we never know for sure what will transpire, but as they are happening, our lives in the here and now. The only time we have. As I think about this week and the trappings of what is possibly the most beloved holiday of Jewish children all over the world, the holiday of Purim, with its trappings of the Gregors, the costumes, The Hamantaschen, the carnival spiels, frivolity, and silliness of all kinds. It occurs to me, not for the first time, that Judaism is a wonderfully deceptive faith. What seems like an open and closed pediatric celebration is anything but. Purim not only carries some rather sophisticated messages, but it is troubling on many levels, levels that resonate in a profoundly contemporary way. The Book of Esther opens on a scene of upper-class excess and masculine hierarchical power. The ultimate symbol of male power, the king, treats his wife, Vashti, as his property and disposes of her when she chooses not to satisfy his whim. It is into this debauched and unsafe environment that Mordecai sends his cousin, Esther. Despite the Disney fantasies of little girls, Esther is under no illusions as to what her new status entails. She is also property, as her predecessors before her, vulnerable to mistreatment, abuse, banishment, and even death, which becomes terrifyingly possible when Mordecai tells her that she must go to the king unbidden to plead for the survival of her people in the face of Haman's plot to destroy all of the Jews in the kingdom. The threat of anti-Semitism from autocrats, narcissists, megalomaniacs, and power-hungry thugs is all too familiar and far too dangerous to dismiss as just a children's story. We win this time in large measure because of Esther's beauty and, very likely, let us say it out loud, her ability to please the king in their bedroom. She may be identified as the heroine of the story, but the reality is that she has no power in an entirely male-dominated culture. She uses what powerless women have used for centuries: her beauty, her sexual prowess, her feminine wiles. The truth is, this is a horrifying story for girls and women that continues to reverberate in the current effort to legislate women's reproductive lives and, by extension, women's health and ability to act as autonomous human beings. Even the name of the holiday, Purim, in Hebrew means lots, the casting of lots that determined the date on which the Jews were to be exterminated. What could be a better reminder of the fragility and precariousness of our lives than to read of our fate being determined by chance? The real genius of the holiday is that we have turned it upside down and inside out. We have transformed a story of criminal intrigue, women's subjugation and objectification, blatant anti-Semitism, human vulnerability and seemingly disposability, sexual politics, human foolishness, hubris, cruelty, and sheer evil into a triumphal, we have transformed all of this into a triumphal, joyous celebration of frivolity, mirth, silliness, and excess. We have transformed it into villains that have become three-cornered pastries, into the casting of lots for death, reappearing as games of chance and luck. It is as if we are saying, as a community, Haman was not the first, and he was certainly not the last. We will face enemies too many times. In our quest to make this world a better, safer, more inclusive, and welcoming place, our best revenge is laughter, a joyful spirit, and an enduring refusal to be cowed. There is something else in this children's holiday that no child would ever notice. God is not mentioned in the book or the Megillah of Esther. No one mentions God. No one prays to God except by implication. In this sense, the scroll of Esther is probably the most modern of all our ancient texts. It assumes a world devoid of divine miracles, a world in which humanity is in charge. In a story that has been reduced to stock figures, puppets, and satiric characters, the Jewish people grows up. There is nothing to stand in the way of Haman's plan to kill the Jews, except for the Jews themselves. As Mordecai says to Esther, perhaps it is for this very purpose that you were put into this position. They succeed by virtue of their courage and their wits, not by God's miracles or marvels. As Irving Greenberg points out in his book, The Jewish Way, this may be a flawed redemption, effected as it is by less than perfect means, but in that it is redemption for our time. There is also in this children's story the small matter of violence at the end of the story, the part we never get to, nor teach, nor talk about. The king, Ahasuerus, gives the Jews license to kill their enemies. Towards the end of the story, then, the Jews go on a killing spree, and 75,000 Shushan inhabitants lose their lives. I suspect this was originally intended to be a parody of such massacres, a parody in which the Jews could imaginatively live out their fantasy of actually having that kind of physical power, military power, as it were. Whatever its explanation, there it is, unadulterated slaughter of the enemy, an imperfect redemption. Life as it is still lived every day in this world. Torah for our time. Torah that aspires to a vision of perfection and yet lives and legislates in the world as it is. Let us resume our breathing so that we can live in this world fully, mindfully, intentionally, without looking back, without looking forward, by living in this moment. Let us renew our positions and breathe in deeply. And even as we breathe in, an understanding of all that is wrong in our world. Let us breathe in as well the knowledge that we can choose laughter. We can choose to eat hamantashen rather than to fear the Hamans that inspired the cookies. Both are very real. Both speak to what it means to be human and how to navigate this very human life. There are those who think that the whole story of Purim is one long satire. It may be, but that doesn't negate the truths that are in its pages and that we feel so powerfully in our lives and in our psyches. I hope you will continue just to sit quietly and breathe in and then out, staying with the breath, focusing on the breath. And if other thoughts enter your consciousness, and they will, you can invite them to come back later. You're busy right now. You're not thinking about what happened yesterday. You're not thinking about the conversation you will need to have later this evening. You are right here, right now, in this space, at this time, on this day. By way of conclusion, however, formal conclusion, and further thought in the days ahead, I share with you the following. Capturing the quick shift from fear to joy that is behind Purim. Rabbi Irving Greenberg writes again in his book, The Jewish Way. Purim celebrated and admitted the narrow margin by which Jews snatched meaning from the jaws of tragedy and absurdity in history. The humor, mockery, and tongue-in-cheek tone of the Book of Esther and of the holiday is a perfect way to express the ambiguities and reversals built into the occasion. Humor can be the key to sanity. And finally, a poem by Simon Jacobson entitled Purim Greetings. May you be turned inside out, upside down, and outside in. May your masks be masked, and your inside unmasked. May your countenance, your punim, shine from within. Panim. As you meet yourself face to face, may your masquerade no longer be needed as the shrouds fall away. May your child smile and dance as the facade is lifted. May you just be. That is our goal of taking our break to breathe. So may you have many moments in the days ahead to just be. I will see you next time. I look forward to it. God bless.